Servus Männer! Today I want to talk about what is going on in France at the moment. There is something new on the Western Front. Our neighbors to the west are discussing now, or actually they are more talking about, two letters that have been written by military personnel in France. The first one, the Lettre ouverte aux généraux, the open letter of the generals, was published by the end of April in Valeurs Actuelles, and it was signed by retired generals, but also, as I understood, by still active military staff. A second anonymous letter followed that was mostly written, or that is supposed to be written, by still active military personnel, and they fear of repercussions. That's why they want to stay anonymous, but they're basically backing up what these highly decorated, well-known retired generals expressed in their first letter. So I read this letter in its original form. My French is still good enough. I also linked it down below. And what I can say is that these former generals and others are basically saying what a lot of people are saying on YouTube and other platforms, what I myself have been saying for many, many years, and that is that the security situation in Europe and many Western countries, and they are talking about France specifically here, of course, is deteriorating very fast due to some factors that they're explicitly naming, and they are just warning the politicians that it is getting worse. The letter is addressed to the president, the parliamentarians, and to the French government. It is an open letter that everybody can read. So in today's video, I want to tell you what the mainstream media made out of this, as you can probably imagine already, and then I want to talk a little bit more about the content in detail. Not about every single line, but basically how the letter is structured and what it is saying. And then towards the end, I want to give you my opinion on the whole thing. But before we get into all that, I want to thank all my supporters and my subscribers. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you like these kinds of videos, make sure to be subscribed, especially on all tech platforms. Links are down below. If you want to support my work, you can do so directly via PayPal or use Patreon or Subscribestar. Alright, I want to start with some general remarks, and that is that when people speak out lately, you often see that these are very, very old people, already retired people, and that is because people who are still in active service or who have careers, they are rather hesitant to speak their mind lately. That is, if what they are saying is contradicting the mainstream narrative and the globalist narratives that our globalist governments are pushing. If you are a school teacher, on the other hand, who is spewing communist propaganda 24 hours a day all week, then that is not a problem, and I've never heard of a single case where one of these communist agitators in the public service in Germany or as a public officer or representative of the state ever got in trouble over this. And the next remark is that this is not just happening in France. Right now, there are several members of the US military who are raising doubts about Joe Biden's suitability and quality as a leader. Alright, so now let's look at what the mainstream media had to say about this. They were, of course, in outrage, and they were saying this is a direct call for insurrection and they are planning a coup and all these things. So all the headlines that you could see was coup d'etat and insurrection and all these things. That is, of course, an absolute lie. This has nothing to do with this letter, as I will show you in detail. They are not even hinting at that. It is quite the opposite. It is not a threat. It is an offer to those politicians to help them. These people are offering the French state, the French government, the French politicians to help them. They're not threatening to replace them or overthrow the republic or something crazy like that. And I also want to add that if you really planned a coup Would you write an open letter to the government announcing it? Like, what was the last coup we had in Germany? I think that was Operation Valkyrie or something, and there is this horrible Hollywood movie about it even. You can look it up if you want to. If you can trust the historians and the history books, then they were bound to secrecy, and they kept it a secret, and they had a huge organization with a lot of planning, very professional, and they had a new government already set up when they wanted to replace the old one. And of course, they didn't write an open letter to the chancellor telling him that, hey, we will replace you soon. Of course, all the preparations were done under extreme secrecy, and had the attempt on the chancellor's life not failed, then maybe it could have been successful. But it failed, as we all know. The chancellor survived, and the whole coup was unsuccessful. That was a real coup. What we're seeing here now is the opposite. It is an offer to help. And it's also funny that the media is trying to find some hidden symbolic meaning. For example, that it is the 200-year anniversary of the death of Napoleon. That was May 5th, I believe. And it is also 60 years after a coup in France by or in Algeria, I should say. French generals, French military, they set up some paramilitary organization that tried to keep Charles de Gaulle from splitting off Algeria from France. But there were never any hints at that. It is only the year. It is only this 60-year time difference that they're looking at. There are no other hints that connect them in any form with that group. All right now, so what does the letter say? As I said already, it is addressed to the president, to the government, and the parliamentarians. So it starts with Monsieur le Président, Mesdames, Messieurs du gouvernement, Mesdames, Messieurs des parlementaires, l'heure est grave, la France est en péril, plusieurs dangers mortels la menacent. It is serious, France is in danger, several mortal dangers threaten her. So they're trying to impress on the audience that things are serious right now. They go on to say that they, as loyal servants of France, even though they're retired, they cannot just be indifferent, and they see that there is a process of disintegration of their homeland. Then there are 3 paragraphs that are, I should say, striking examples of what they mean. They pick very serious problems in their opinion, and they try to explain a little bit what they mean in detail. The first one is anti-colonialism, cultural Marxism, critical race theory, and all that stuff, that people who hate France have become very powerful and they despise the nation, its traditions, its culture, and so on. The second paragraph is about the influx of foreign groups that are not compatible with French culture and with French society. And the third one is also towards law enforcement and the state. This is something I constantly talk about in the case of Germany, that our state is very decisively acting against law-abiding citizens, but they're shielding and protecting criminals. And the example that they're making here is that when upstanding French taxpayers are protesting, like the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, then the police is cracking down on them with full force. And at the same time, another group of, let's say, more exotic and colorful people are committing various crimes. They are not doing anything. As I said so many times, selective enforcement of laws and rules, anarcho-tyranny, that is the third paragraph here. By the way, Google Translate made a mistake here. The word délitement was translated as discrimination. I think it is more disintegration, deterioration, but anyway. So it's not perfect, but you get the gist of it if you don't understand French. They go on to write that it is the job of the government to save the people or to protect the people from these dangers. And they warn the political elites of France from procrastination or laxity because this situation is getting worse. And they once again offer their assistance. They say if things get really worse, then we will stand ready to defend France and French people. And then in the last paragraph, once more, they literally and very clearly warn the country or the people who run the country from a civil conflict with thousands of victims, and they impress furthermore on them that they have a responsibility and that blood would be on their hands then if they fail to act now. Now, if you speak French, please read the whole letter. It's not too long, or at least you can use, as I show here, a translation tool. It is not perfect, but it is better than nothing. And form your own opinion about the content of this open letter. Now, once again, after reading it, I did not have the impression, and I think you cannot claim at all, that this is a threat towards the French government. This is not a threat to overturn or overthrow the Republic. This is an offer of assistance and a warning. And I would go even further. In my opinion, this is not even a political letter. They're not saying Macron is bad, please vote Le Pen. They're not saying that. They're warning the government and the parliamentarians and the president that things are getting worse and that they want to help them. They're not doing party politics here. That was done by the government actually and by leftist politicians. They turned that into a party political thing. I have a whole different interpretation of this letter. For me, these are security experts, and they are giving their expert opinion based on their skill, their knowledge, and their experience. They're giving an expert opinion here. You must know that these soldiers have been deployed for the last decades all over the world, not in real classical wars like World War I or something like that, but they have been deployed in these so-called peacekeeping missions. Basically, they were a garrison force that was supposed to protect soft targets and civilians and to maintain public order and to maintain the status quo. So they were on the lookout for insurgents all the time in other countries. That means they are experts in identifying the red flags and all the factors that go into an insurgency and civil unrest. They know the signs. They know how it looks like when such a situation is developing, and they're seeing that in their own country now, and they're warning people. That's all they do, in my opinion. Of course, it cannot be denied that the mainstream media, that Macron's government, they were slamming them and they were calling them out and threatening them with legal consequences. It goes without saying that Marine Le Pen from the Rassemblement National, of course, sided with them. What do they expect, huh? And from what I have learned and read at least is that many people in the French military are supporting these letters, and also many people among the population are also seeing it the same way. It should also be noted that not many people in France, or let's say it's split 50-50 almost, not many people see the Rassemblement National as a threat to democracy anymore. Half of the French people see them as a normal political party that is just more conservative than the rest, the socialists in France. And in my opinion, the reactions of the establishment could make the group that sees the Rassemblement National as a good party much larger. It seems like that common sense French people are supporting this, while the socialist intelligentsia is showing a very distinct negative reaction towards it. Now at the end of the presentation, I want to look at the question of, is that a threat or is it an offer to help? I told you already what my opinion is, but I want to look at this question a little more in detail from a very fundamental abstract point of view. So I want you to imagine that we have three groups. Group A, B, and C. Group B is the group making the statement. The statement is directed towards Group A, and Group C is a third party. If Group B is saying, hey, Group A, look, I cannot really guarantee for your safety anymore. You should do something. You should really do something. Otherwise, it's not safe for you anymore. See? Now, this is something that somebody could say who really wants to help and is concerned about Group A, or the person, Group B or person B, is some kind of a mafia gangster trying to do a shakedown. to blackmail Group A. How can we tell these scenarios apart? Well, it is very, very easy actually. If this was a threat, then the danger that Group B is warning Group A about would be caused or originates from Group B itself. Then it is a threat. If this danger is coming from a third party, Group C, then it is a warning. There are, for example, many exotic groups in Germany who make statements like, oh, if the government and all these evil Germans go on to provoke us, then we cannot guarantee for their safety anymore. Some of our brothers and sisters might do something. That is a threat. That is a clear threat because the violence or the danger is coming from the same group that is doing the so-called warning. But if you are saying, hey, look, Group C seems really dangerous, Group A, they are trying to do something, you should act now, that is a warning. Unless Group B and C are secretly in cahoots with each other and they are actually connected and working together, then it would also be a threat. But the question is then if you see it or not. But in this case, I think we can clearly say that the French military is not in cahoots with some outlaws from the banlieues in order to destabilize France. A little bit like the Sith and the Trade Federation in Star Wars or something. I think we can exclude that option. So from a very fundamental viewpoint, we can say that this is not a threat because the French military doesn't say we will do something. They're saying they are doing something and we will protect you and we are ready. If you need help, ask us. That is what they're saying. Alright, so let me know what you think about that. Maybe it is the same in your country, maybe something similar is happening there. These things are of course not unique to France. France and the UK, I would say, and the US by the way also, they're just a little further down this road already. Germany was still homogeneous until the 1990s almost, I would say. So we have a lot of catching up to do from the point of view of the globalists. And that explains 2015, for example. They want us to catch up as fast as possible with these colonial powers, these former colonial powers that, of course, have a much more diverse population right now already for a much longer time. All right, enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden.